And of course, crime is one of the issues that experts want the president to talk about, to talk very strongly about in the State of the Nation address later this week. We'll bring you that live and all the pre and post coverage. Crime up there, economics, Eskom, and of course this finding about the July unrest. Will the president touch on that? That the findings say the cabinet actually is responsible for those who died. Let's cross live now to our reporter. You heard him there, Atula Joka. Atula, just tell us more about what's expected from the president on Thursday, and what is SONA, as it's called, all about?
Yeah, well, certainly we will be seeing SONA coming for the very first time from the City Hall, which has been granted by the City of Cape Town. It will be quite a memorable and a historic event that will be taking place. But of course, one of the issues and one of the factors that the residents of Cape Town will be forward to looking to will be the issue of crime, which is quite prevalent in the Western Cape. We've seen every time the statistics that have been released by the Minister of Police that Cape Town has always come out in one of the leading provinces when it comes to crime and also how rife it is in the Western Cape. I went today to Nyanga township to speak to some of the residents there and also to the community policing forum. They were saying, of course, there were factors that are leading to crimes such as the substance abuse, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and also unemployment, which is quite rife in that area. So we will be seeing a lot of the president delving much more deeper into crime to see how it can be kept, it has become quite an anomaly here in the Western Cape. But I will be joined by the MACO members for safety and security here in the Western Cape to just talk to us and unpack how they are trying to deal with the dynamics of crime. One of the issues that came out strongly from the people is the fact that crime is not really widespread in the Western Cape. It is affecting some of certain areas, which is the issue that I want us to start about with the MACO member here, Mr. J.P. Smith. One of the issues that came out strongly from the people was the fact that crime is not so prevalent maybe in some of the areas that you would call urban areas, but it is quite prevalent and quite prominent in what you would call townships and so forth. Can you speak to us about that factor?
I think it is well recorded in the statistics that 10 out of the 60 police stations in the city probably generate around 50% of our violent crime stats. So these criminologists generally say that the crime is highly localized. And that's also a feature that many communities have taken huge strides in improving their own safety. 50,000 neighborhood watch members, many other activities in terms of the erecting of cameras. Communities have become extremely active in promoting their own safety. But there are a few communities who have been burdened with really significant crime statistics, and that's why the provincial government and the city, in seeing those communities were struggling, rolled out the LEAP intervention with 100 extra officers in each of these 10 areas. And over the next 12 to 24 months, we'll roll out a series of other measures that will further bolster and support that LEAP intervention to build on the successes that they have achieved over the last year and a half. And already for Nyanga, for instance, that story is quite a positive story. We have 3 quarters in a row now. If you look at the SABC crime statistics, we've seen for 3 quarters in a row how those stats have either improved. The murder rate, which is the most reliable of the statistics, have either improved or stabilized, and that's really positive. 2 significant improvements. We hope that the 4th quarter will show a further such improvement in the murder rate, and that probably has something to do with the very substantial amount of firearms that Metro Police and law enforcement is now taking off the streets in Nyanga, the arrests they're making. And we've had a huge increase in those stats with the further deployment of LEAP, as with the other 10 hotspots in the city.
Some of the issues that have been raised, there was the fact that contact crimes are now starting to also increase, because they are saying there's been a decrease in the murder. We know previously it was called the murder capital, one of the murder capitals in the country, but that has decreased. But now the contact crimes are increasing, such as rape. These are domestic problems. They are saying you are also assisting them to try and sensitize the community around the cases of gender-based violence. How are you faring with that issue?
Actually, I think if you go look at these statistics, and I have them here with me, you can scrutinize them with me afterwards. These stats actually show a very different picture. If we look at the stats over the last period, out of the 7 different categories of crime recorded, you'll see that all of them are reduced. All of them are showing positive improvements, and one of them, in terms of the murder rate in this particular quarter, has stabilized. So I think the statistics don't bear out an increase in contact crime. Quite the contrary, that murder, sexual offences, attempted murder, assault with intention to cause grievous bodily harm, common assault, common robbery, and robbery with aggravated circumstances all show improvements generally over the last 5 years, although some of them fluctuate here and there, but the general trend is well down, and in many of these quarters, like this particular one, is down across all categories.
Now, this was the issue which was raised by the Community Policing Forum. Maybe it is not on the statistics, but they were saying we are still battling with cases of sexual violence and also carjackings as well. So going forward, what is the bigger plan to make sure that you combat this crime completely?
So I think LEAP has been an incredibly valuable deployment in this. It's an absolute success story. So much so that Minister Khayelitsha had to acknowledge that the only province that showed a reduction in murder stats was in fact the Western Cape, and predominantly in these areas. I mean, again, I can share the stats with you afterwards and you can look with me at the different categories, but across the board, the LEAP areas specifically are showing improvements. We're doing 2 major investments in terms of adding investigative resources to each of the LEAP deployments to do watching briefs on those cases, so we make sure where there's a firearm or drugs or a serious case that we monitor and track that case through our Safety and Security Investigations Unit to make sure there's a positive outcome, a higher conviction rate, so the same criminals are not just recycled, so that the community can have some relief. And secondly, we're adding additional technologies, 2 million rand in Nyanga, for instance, for CCTV cameras across the city and all the hotspots, significant CCTV investments, the eye in the sky, drone, gunfire detection. So on the technology front, we're making sure our officers can work as sharp and effectively as possible.
Another issue was the allocation of budgets to provinces. Are you happy with what the province is getting? I understand that the minister was saying the Western Cape is getting also a lion's share, but it has been quite contested. What is your take on that?
The stats traditionally haven't. I've heard the minister say that repeatedly. The problem is we can only go on the statistics we have available. And the last time the provincial government got statistics, and the time before that, we saw that we were below the national average. If your national average was 1 officer to 387, the Western Cape was in fact below that national average. And even if you say that the national average is what you must be happy with, that national average is below international best practice. So across South Africa, communities, not just in the Western Cape, forget about Western Cape versus everywhere else, across South Africa, our police stations are under-resourced. That is why our communities are constantly struggling with crime. When you speak to international crime experts, they will tell you, as soon as they see your deployment statistics, you're going to have a grim time with these kind of deployment community statistics, and your communities are going to suffer. But of course, at the moment, after 2 years of lockdown, with the training colleges and SAPs not having been open all the time and not having been able to train continuously, the attrition rate, the rate at which SAPs is losing staff relative to how new staff are being trained, has caused even further problems in that most of your stations are now below, well below, the staff establishments rates they were supposed to have.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mayor Member for Safety and Security in the city of Cape Town, Mr. J.V. Smith, just painting to us the picture of crime, violence in the Western Cape, saying, of course, in terms of the budget allocation, the Western Cape is not really receiving that lion's share. If they're looking at the statistics, they are quite receiving under the national average, saying, of course, most police stations throughout the country are under-resourced. So this is one of the matters, one of the factors that the President will be reflecting on in his SONA speech. We understand over the last 2 years, there was no recruitment of the police due to COVID-19. So we'll be looking at that as well. Maybe the President will talk about how they are looking to reinforce. And also he was speaking about some of the measures and also some of the mechanisms that they have put in place, such as the LEAP services that they have put in communities to try and fight and combat crime here in the city of Cape Town. We will be tracking the story, following it up, and also bringing you those statistics and also some of the developing crimes that are happening here in the Western Cape to make sure that we keep the country updated and also liaising, of course, with the relevant stakeholders. Back to you, Francis.
Thank you very much, SABC News reporter Atule Joka. And yes, we will be bringing you all the big issues and building up to the State of the Nation address on Thursday.